As the years rolled on, James's fascination with the tree only deepened. The swelling had grown so large that it was impossible to ignore. It wasn't just a small bump anymore. It looked like a second trunk trying to break free from the main one. The tree had become a local landmark of sorts, and people passing by often stopped to gawk at it. Some even took pictures, sharing them online with captions like "Nature's Mystery" or "The Tree with a Belly." For James, though, the swelling wasn't just a curiosity, it was personal. It felt like the tree was holding on to something meant for him, something hidden beneath its bark. The neighbors loved to speculate about what could be causing the bulge. One elderly man who lived nearby swore it was a beehive. "Bees are smart," he'd say, leaning on his walking stick. "They know how to make themselves at home anywhere." Another neighbor, a young mother with 2 kids, thought it might be some kind of fungus. "Maybe it's a mushroom growing inside the tree," she suggested, laughing nervously. "You should call an expert to check it out." James listened to these theories politely but never gave them much weight. He knew better than anyone that the swelling wasn't caused by bees or mushrooms. Over the decades, he had watched it grow steadily, almost methodically. If anything, it seemed deliberate, as if the tree itself were protecting something valuable within. This idea planted a seed in his mind, one that grew into a quiet obsession. What if the tree really did hold a secret? And what if that secret was meant for him to discover? Emily, now grown up and living in another city, would occasionally visit her father. During these visits, she couldn't help but notice how much the tree still dominated his thoughts. "Dad," she'd tease him gently, "you're acting like this tree is your treasure chest." Her tone was light, but there was always a flicker of curiosity in her eyes. She remembered the countless times they'd stood under its branches as kids, talking about school and dreams. Now, seeing her father's unwavering focus on the tree made her wonder if there was more to it than just nostalgia. During one of her visits, Emily decided to dig deeper. They were sitting on the porch after dinner, sipping hot tea and watching the sun set behind the forest. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, and the sky was painted in shades of orange and purple. "So," Emily began, setting her cup down, "what do you think is inside that thing?" James hesitated for a moment, staring off into the distance. Then, with a soft chuckle, he replied, "I don't know, sweetheart, but I can't shake the feeling that it's important, like it's waiting for me to figure it out." Emily tilted her head, intrigued. "Do you think it's worth opening it up?" "Cutting into it, I mean?" James sighed, rubbing his temples. "I've thought about it many times, but it feels wrong somehow. That tree has been here longer than any of us. It's part of the land, part of our lives. To cut into it, it's like disturbing something sacred." Emily nodded slowly, understanding where he was coming from. Still, she couldn't deny the excitement bubbling inside her. The thought of uncovering a hidden secret was thrilling, even if it belonged to a tree. "Well," she said finally, "if you ever decide to do it, let me know. I want to be there when it happens." Her words lingered in James's mind long after she left. He found himself thinking about them during his daily walks, especially when he passed by the tree. Each time he paused for a moment, running his fingers over the swollen bark. It felt smooth and solid, almost inviting. There was no sign of decay or damage, just a steady growth that defied logic. Whatever was inside, it had been preserved perfectly for decades. One evening, as James sat alone in his living room flipping through old photo albums, he stumbled upon a picture of Emily as a child. She was standing next to the tree, grinning widely while holding a kite. In the background, the swelling was barely noticeable, a tiny bump compared to what it had become today. Looking at the photo brought back a flood of memories: picnics under the tree, laughter-filled conversations, and quiet moments of reflection. The tree had been a constant presence throughout their lives, silently witnessing their joys and sorrows. Suddenly, an idea struck James. What if the swelling wasn't just a random anomaly? What if it was a message, or a gift, from someone who had come before him? Maybe someone had placed something inside the tree long ago, hoping it would be discovered someday. The thought sent shivers down his spine. He realized that he might be the only person alive who cared enough to find out. Over the next few weeks, James became consumed by the idea of opening the tree. He started researching tools and techniques online, reading articles about how to safely cut into wood without causing too much damage. He even called a friend who worked in forestry to ask for advice. "If you're serious about this," the friend told him, "you'll need to be careful. You don't want to ruin the tree or hurt yourself." Despite the warnings, James couldn't ignore the pull he felt toward the task. Every night, he lay awake imagining what he might find inside. Was it a letter? A piece of jewelry? Or perhaps something entirely unexpected? The possibilities were endless, and each one filled him with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Finally, one crisp autumn morning, James made up his mind. He grabbed his jacket, slipped on his boots, and headed outside. Standing in front of the tree, he took a deep breath and placed his hand on the swelling. It felt warm beneath his touch, almost alive. For a moment, he wondered if he was making a mistake. But then he reminded himself why he had waited so long to uncover the truth. With determination in his heart, James went back inside to gather the tools he'd need. He didn't tell anyone, not even Emily, what he was planning to do. This was something he needed to face alone, a journey that had started 30 years ago and was finally reaching its climax. As he prepared for the task ahead, he couldn't help but feel a sense of anticipation building within him. Whatever lay inside the tree, it was about to change everything, for him, for the town, and maybe even for the generations to come. In a small, quiet town surrounded by lush green hills and thick forests, there lived a man named James Harper. He wasn't just any man. He was a hard-working single dad who had spent most of his life taking care of his daughter, Emily. Life hadn't been easy for him. Years ago, he lost his wife in a car accident, leaving him to raise their young child alone. Despite the hardships, James never let bitterness take over. Instead, he poured all his energy into being the best father he could be. Every evening, no matter how tired he felt or how busy his day had been, James made it a point to go for a long walk through the forest behind their house. At first, these walks were his way of clearing his head after long hours at work. The fresh air and peaceful surroundings helped calm his mind. But as time went on, they became more than just a routine. They turned into something sacred, almost like therapy. These walks gave him space to reflect on life, think about his dreams, and sometimes even cry when the weight of everything felt too heavy. One particular evening, about 30 years ago, James noticed something unusual during one of his strolls. There was an old oak tree near the edge of the woods that he passed every day without giving it much thought. But this time, something caught his eye. On the trunk of the tree, there was a strange swelling, a bulge that looked out of place. At first glance, it seemed like nothing special. Maybe some kind of natural deformity caused by weather or insects. Curious, James stopped to examine it closely. He touched the swollen part with his fingers, feeling its texture. It didn't feel soft or rotten like you'd expect if it were damaged. Instead, it felt firm, almost as though it was growing intentionally. James couldn't explain why, but the oddity intrigued him. Over the next few days, he found himself paying closer attention to the tree whenever he walked past it. And then something remarkable happened. The bulge started getting bigger. Not dramatically, but enough for him to notice over time. This tiny detail sparked a sense of wonder in James. Was it possible that trees could grow in such peculiar ways? Or was there something else going on here? As months turned into years, the swelling continued to expand. Each time James walked by, he would pause for a moment, observing the changes. Sometimes he brought a camera along to document its growth. Other times, he scribbled notes in a little notebook he carried in his pocket. To anyone else, this might have seemed odd. Why would someone spend so much time obsessing over a random tree? But for James, it became a sort of personal project, a way to connect with nature and distract himself from the stresses of daily life. Meanwhile, Emily grew up watching her father's fascination with the tree. As a kid, she didn't fully understand why her dad cared so much about it. All she knew was that he talked about it often and always made sure to check on it during their weekend hikes together. "Why does that tree matter so much to you?" she'd ask him innocently. James would smile and say, "Because it's different, sweetheart. Most things in life are ordinary, but this tree, it's got a story." Emily learned to accept her father's quirks, even if she didn't completely get them. Over time, she came to appreciate the tree herself, not because of the swelling, but because it represented a bond between her and her dad. They shared countless memories standing under its branches, talking about school, friends, and dreams for the future. Life moved forward, as it always does. Emily finished high school and left for college, eager to explore the world beyond their small town. James missed her terribly, but was proud of the independent young woman she had become. Without Emily around, the house felt emptier, and his walks through the forest became lonelier. Yet the tree remained a constant presence, silently witnessing the passage of time alongside him. By now, the swelling had grown significantly larger, almost resembling a second trunk sprouting from the main one. People in the neighborhood began to notice it too. Some joked about it, calling it James's tree and speculating wildly about what might be causing the strange growth. A few suggested it could be housing a colony of bees or some other critters. Others whispered about supernatural explanations, saying the tree must be cursed or blessed depending on who you asked. But James paid little attention to these rumors. For him, the tree wasn't just a curiosity, it was a companion. It had stood by him through the ups and downs of life, silently offering comfort when words failed. And deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that the swelling held a secret meant specifically for him. What exactly that secret was, he didn't know, but he was determined to find out, even if it took decades. And so, year after year, James kept returning to the tree, watching it change and grow. Little did he know that the answers he sought were waiting patiently inside, biding their time until the right moment arrived. The next morning, James woke up earlier than usual, his mind buzzing with thoughts of the letters he had found inside the tree. He hadn't been able to sleep much the previous night, replaying the discovery over and over in his head. The box sat on his kitchen table, its rusted edges catching the soft glow of the early sunlight streaming through the window. It looked so ordinary, yet it held something extraordinary, a piece of someone's life frozen in time. James poured himself a cup of coffee and sat down at the table, staring at the box. He felt a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. What exactly would these letters reveal? Would they answer all the questions that had lingered in his mind for decades, or would they raise even more? Taking another sip of coffee, he decided there was only one way to find out. Slowly, he opened the box again and carefully removed the bundle of letters. The first letter was folded neatly, its paper brittle with age. As James unfolded it, he noticed the handwriting was elegant, almost poetic, as if the writer had taken great care to make every word count. The ink had faded slightly, but the words were still legible. At the top of the page, it read, "To the one who left me." James paused, letting the title sink in. Whoever wrote this wasn't just jotting down random thoughts. They were pouring their heart out to someone who had left them behind. As he began to read, the voice of the writer came alive in his mind. She spoke of falling deeply in love with a man who had promised her the world. She described their courtship, the laughter, the stolen glances, the promises whispered under the stars. But then things took a darker turn. The man she loved vanished without explanation, leaving her heartbroken and confused. In the letter, she begged him to come back to explain why he had abandoned her. Her pain was raw and unfiltered, jumping off the page and wrapping itself around James like a heavy blanket. He read on, moving to the second letter. This one was angrier, filled with frustration and betrayal. "How could you do this?" she wrote. "You said forever, but forever lasted only a season. Did you ever truly care about me, or was I just a passing fancy?" Each sentence carried the weight of unanswered questions, each word dripping with sorrow and longing. By the third letter, her tone softened, turning introspective. She admitted that she still loved him despite everything, but she also acknowledged that holding on to hope was slowly destroying her. "I don't know how to move forward," she confessed, "but maybe writing these letters will help me let go." James couldn't stop reading. Each letter revealed a different facet of the writer's emotions, her anger, her sadness, her resilience. Some were short and abrupt, while others spanned multiple pages, detailing her struggles to rebuild her life after being left behind. Through it all, James felt an overwhelming sense of connection to her. Though he didn't know her name or what she looked like, he understood her pain. After losing his wife, he too had faced moments of despair, wondering how to pick up the pieces and keep going. Reading her words made him feel less alone, as if she were reaching across time to tell him that healing was possible, even when it felt impossible. By the time he reached the last letter, James's eyes were moist with tears. This final note was written years after the others, and its tone was calm and reflective. "I've stopped waiting for you," she wrote. "Not because I no longer love you, but because I realize now that love isn't always enough. Sometimes people leave, not because they want to hurt us, but because they can't stay. And sometimes we have to forgive them, not for their sake, but for ours." She ended the letter with a simple sentence. "Thank you for teaching me how to love deeply, even if it hurt. Thank you for showing me that I am stronger than I thought." James closed the letter and leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed by the depth of emotion captured within those pages. He could almost picture the woman sitting somewhere quiet, penning these words with trembling hands. She must have been brave to face her pain so honestly, to confront her own heartbreak and find meaning in it. For a long time, James sat in silence, letting the weight of the letters settle in his chest. They weren't just pieces of paper, they were fragments of a soul laid bare. And somehow, the tree had kept them safe all these years, waiting for the right person to find them. James realized that discovering the letters wasn't just about solving a mystery, it was about honoring the life and story of someone who had come before him. These letters deserved to be shared, to remind others that even in our darkest moments, we are never truly alone. When Emily arrived later that afternoon, James greeted her with a mix of excitement and reverence. "You won't believe what I found," he said, leading her to the kitchen table where the box sat. Her curiosity was immediate. "What is it?" she asked, pulling out a chair and sitting down beside him. James hesitated for a moment, unsure how to put into words what he had experienced. Finally, he simply handed her the first letter. Emily began to read, her expression shifting from confusion to awe as she absorbed the contents. "This is incredible," she murmured, flipping through the pages. "It's like we're stepping into someone else's life." James nodded. "That's exactly how I felt. Whoever wrote these letters trusted the tree to keep them safe. And now, we're the ones who get to carry their story forward." Together, father and daughter spent the rest of the day discussing the letters, piecing together the fragments of the writer's life. They speculated about who she might have been, what era she lived in, and whether the man she loved ever returned. While they couldn't answer all their questions, they agreed on one thing: the letters needed to be preserved. They deserved to be seen, heard, and appreciated, not locked away in a dusty old box. The next day, James and Emily visited the local historical society, a small building tucked away in the heart of town. Inside, shelves lined the walls, filled with artifacts and documents from the area's past. An elderly volunteer named Ruth greeted them warmly, her glasses perched precariously on the tip of her nose. When James explained what they had found, Ruth's eyes lit up with interest. "These could be invaluable," she said, carefully examining the letters. "They offer a glimpse into the lives of people who lived here long ago. We'd be honored to preserve them." With a sense of relief and pride, James handed over the letters, knowing they were in good hands. Before leaving, Ruth promised to digitize the letters and create an exhibit so others could learn about the woman who had entrusted her secrets to the tree. As they walked back home, Emily linked her arm through her father's. "Do you think she ever found peace?" she asked softly. James smiled, gazing at the towering oak tree in the distance. "I think so," he replied. Her words show that she grew stronger, wiser. Maybe finding peace wasn't about forgetting. It was about remembering and letting go. In the days that followed, James returned to the tree often, standing beneath its branches and marveling at how much it had given him. It wasn't just a tree anymore. It was a symbol of resilience, patience, and the enduring power of human connection. Life, like the tree, holds countless mysteries, some of which take decades to unravel. But when the answers finally come, they can change everything, for the better. The morning James decided to open the tree, the air felt different, crisp and charged, like the world was holding its breath. The sun peeked through the dense canopy of leaves, casting golden patches on the forest floor. James stood in front of the oak tree, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and apprehension. This moment had been decades in the making, and now that it was finally here, he wasn't sure if he was ready. But deep down, he knew there was no turning back. He had spent the previous evening gathering tools from the shed: a handsaw, a chisel, a hammer, and a pair of sturdy gloves. He laid them out neatly on the ground beside him, inspecting each one as if preparing for surgery. The thought made him chuckle nervously. "Here goes nothing," he muttered under his breath, gripping the saw tightly. Before starting, James took a step back to look at the tree one last time. It was massive, its branches stretching high into the sky like arms reaching for the heavens. The swelling on its trunk was impossible to miss now. It was almost as wide as a basketball and protruded so far that it cast its own shadow. James ran his fingers over the bark, feeling its rough texture beneath his calloused hands. 30 years, he whispered. "I've waited 30 years for this." With a deep breath, he got to work. The first cut was the hardest, not because of the effort required, but because it felt like crossing a line. For decades, the tree had stood untouched, its secrets safe within. Now James was breaking that barrier, and it weighed heavily on him. The saw bit into the bark with a soft grating sound, sending shavings spiraling to the ground. Each stroke felt deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if he were unlocking something sacred. As he worked, memories flooded his mind. He remembered bringing Emily here as a child, her laughter echoing through the woods as she chased butterflies or tried to climb the lower branches. He thought about the countless evenings he'd spent sitting at the base of the tree, talking to it as if it could hear him. In those moments, the tree had been more than just a plant. It had been a confidant, a silent witness to his joys and sorrows. And now, he was cutting into it, hoping to uncover the truth it had guarded for so long. The process was slow and labor-intensive. The wood was denser than he expected, requiring steady pressure with every pull of the saw. Sweat trickled down his forehead despite the cool autumn air, and his muscles began to ache after just a few minutes. Still, James pushed forward, driven by a mix of curiosity and determination. Every once in a while, he paused to wipe his brow or take a sip of water from the bottle he'd brought along. But mostly, he focused on the task at hand, letting the rhythm of the saw soothe his nerves. Hours passed, though it felt like both an eternity and no time at all. Eventually, James reached the hollow cavity inside the swelling. He switched to the chisel and hammer, carefully prying away chunks of wood to reveal what lay beneath. The smell of fresh-cut timber filled the air, mingling with the earthy scent of fallen leaves. His hands trembled slightly as he worked, anticipation building with each strike of the hammer. Finally, after what felt like forever, he broke through. A small opening appeared, revealing a dark space inside. James leaned closer, squinting to see better. At first glance, it looked empty except for a faint glint of metal reflecting the sunlight. His pulse quickened as he reached in and pulled out a box. It was small, rectangular, and rusted with age, but still intact. The lid was slightly warped, but the hinges held firm. James sat back on his heels, staring at the box in disbelief. 30 years of wondering, speculating, and waiting had led to this moment. He cradled it gently in his hands, marveling at how something so ordinary could feel so extraordinary. The weight of the box was surprisingly light, but it carried the weight of decades of mystery. For a moment, he hesitated. What if opening it ruined everything? What if the contents didn't live up to the hype in his head? But then he shook off the doubt. He had come too far to stop now. Slowly, he pried open the lid, which gave way with a soft creak. Inside, wrapped in yellowed paper and tied together with string, were a bundle of letters. James's breath caught in his throat. Carefully, he untied the string and unfolded the top letter. The handwriting was elegant yet faded, written in ink that had bled slightly over time. As he scanned the words, his eyes widened. These weren't just random notes, they were heartfelt letters filled with raw emotion and longing. Someone had poured their soul into these pages, sharing their deepest thoughts and feelings. James couldn't read them all right then. He needed time to process, but he knew immediately that they told a story. a story of love, loss, and heartbreak. Whoever had hidden these letters in the tree had trusted it to keep their secrets safe. And now, James was the keeper of that trust. Sitting there amidst the scattered wood shavings and the towering oak, James felt a profound sense of connection, not just to the person who had written the letters, but to the tree itself. It had protected this treasure for decades, silently standing guard until the right person came along to find it. And somehow James knew that person was meant to be him. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the forest floor, James gathered the letters and placed them back in the box. He would read them properly later, in the comfort of his home. For now, he simply sat there, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he had uncovered. The tree had given him more than answers. It had given him a glimpse into the past, a reminder of the power of human emotion, and a newfound appreciation for the mysteries life holds. Tomorrow, he would share this discovery with Emily. She deserved to know, too. But for now, he let the quiet of the forest envelop him, savoring the moment. After 30 years of observation and patience, the tree had finally revealed its secret, and in doing so, it had changed James's life forever. The days turned into weeks, and the story of the letters spread throughout the small town like wildfire. People couldn't stop talking about the discovery hidden inside the old oak tree. It wasn't just a local curiosity anymore. It had become something much bigger, something that touched hearts in unexpected ways. The Historical Society's exhibit featuring the letters drew visitors from neighboring towns, each person eager to catch a glimpse of the woman's words and feel the emotions she had poured onto those fragile pages. James found himself at the center of it all, though he hadn't planned for any of this attention. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers approached him with questions, compliments, and stories of their own. One elderly woman told James how the letters reminded her of her late husband, who had promised to marry her but passed away before they could start their life together. A young man confessed that reading the letters helped him understand his mother's pain after his father left when he was a child. Each story added another layer to the impact of the discovery, showing James just how universal the themes of love, loss, and healing truly were. Emily, too, became deeply involved in sharing the story. She started documenting everything: her father's journey with the tree, the process of uncovering the letters, and the reactions of the community. At first, it was just a way to preserve the memory for herself, but soon she realized it could be more. With James's permission, she created a short film using photos, videos, and interviews with people who had been moved by the letters. The project quickly gained traction online, resonating with viewers far beyond the borders of their little town. One evening, as James sat on the porch watching the sunset, Emily joined him, holding her laptop. "Dad," she began hesitantly, "you should see this." She opened a video platform where her film had been uploaded just days earlier. The comments section was flooded with messages from people all over the world. Some thanked them for sharing such a heartfelt story, while others shared their own experiences of heartbreak and resilience. One comment stood out: "Your story reminds me that even when we lose someone, their presence stays with us. In memories, in lessons learned, and sometimes in trees." James smiled softly, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. He never imagined that cutting open the tree would lead to this, a ripple effect of connection and understanding that reached so many lives. For years, he had thought of the tree as his personal companion, a silent witness to his struggles and triumphs. Now it had become a symbol of hope and humanity, bridging gaps between generations and communities. But the tree itself wasn't forgotten amid all the excitement. In fact, it seemed to take on a new kind of significance. Neighbors began visiting it regularly, leaving flowers or small tokens of gratitude at its base. Children played around it, imagining the secrets it might still hold. Even tourists stopped by to snap pictures, marveling at the swelling that had once been such a mystery. The tree, scarred but still standing tall, became a testament to the idea that beauty can emerge from imperfection, and that sometimes scars tell the most powerful stories. For James, spending time near the tree remained a cherished ritual. On weekends, he'd bring a chair outside and sit beneath its branches, listening to the rustle of leaves and the distant chirping of birds. He often thought about the woman who had written the letters, wondering what her life had been like after she tucked them away. Had she remarried? Found happiness elsewhere? Or simply learned to live with the ache of unanswered questions? Though he'd never know for sure, he liked to imagine her smiling somewhere, knowing that her words had found a purpose long after she was gone. Emily noticed a change in her father during this time. He seemed lighter, freer somehow, as if carrying the weight of the tree's secret for 30 years had finally lifted. His walks became longer again, his laughter louder, and while he still missed her mother dearly, there was a sense of peace in his eyes that hadn't been there before. "You know," he said one evening as they strolled through the forest together, "I think I've spent my whole life looking for answers. First with your mom, then with the tree. But maybe the real answer is that life doesn't always give us closure. Sometimes it gives us moments, little glimpses of meaning, that help us keep moving forward." Emily nodded, linking her arm through his. "And sometimes," she added, "those moments come from the most unexpected places, like a tree." As winter approached, the forest transformed into a wonderland of frost-covered branches and crisp air. The tree stood resilient against the cold, its bark dark and rugged against the white snow. James and Emily decided to host a small gathering near it, inviting friends, neighbors, and anyone else who wanted to celebrate the story that had brought them all together. They brought blankets, hot cocoa, and lanterns to light up the evening. Someone brought a guitar and started playing soft melodies, while others shared stories and laughed under the starlit sky. Standing beside the tree, James looked around at the faces glowing in the lantern light. He felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for the tree, for the letters, for his daughter, and for the community that had embraced the story so fully. Life was unpredictable, full of twists and turns that no one could foresee. But in those unpredictable moments lay the magic, the chance to connect, to grow, and to find meaning in the ordinary. When the night ended and everyone went home, James stayed behind for a while, leaning against the tree's sturdy trunk. He closed his eyes, letting the quiet of the forest wash over him. For 30 years, he had wondered what lay inside the swelling. Now he knew the truth. It wasn't just letters or a hidden object. It was a reminder that life is full of mysteries, waiting patiently for us to discover them. And sometimes, all it takes is patience, persistence, and a willingness to look closer. As he walked back toward the house, James glanced over his shoulder one last time. The tree stood tall against the horizon, its silhouette framed by the twinkling stars above. It wasn't just a tree anymore. It was a keeper of secrets, a bearer of stories, and a silent guardian of the human spirit. And James knew without a doubt that he would carry its legacy with him for the rest of his days.